You are listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. Sustainable World Radio brings you in-depth interviews, news, and commentary about exciting, creative, and innovative ways of living. Produced in Santa Barbara, California, Sustainable World focuses on positive solutions to environmental challenges, solutions that adhere to the permaculture ethics, earth care, people care, fair share. Are you interested in learning more about permaculture projects around the globe, how to plant a food forest, restorative design, or ethnobotany? Then stay tuned to Sustainable World Radio. I'm Jill Cloutier. And could you tell us a little bit about your company in Santa Barbara?
Well, I have an organic catering business, and basically what that means is that we specialize in using organic ingredients, and I try to support local farmers or local producers, fishermen or people that make cheese or something like this, and buy as much local as possible in my menus, as well as creating menus that are seasonal, so they're utilizing what we have in abundance at the certain time of year.
Maybe you could backtrack a little bit and let us know, when did you first become aware of what organic means and using organic produce?
In my catering business, I guess that's always been my mission, and the reason why I began catering and cooking was to share organic produce and ingredients with the general public. In my own personal life, I first became aware of organics when I moved up to Santa Barbara. I was a student at the university and was introduced to the Isla Vista Co-op. And from there, I began farming and working at an heirloom nursery, and just decided that I wanted to start cooking and sharing the abundance of the fields and what we have in this area with people.
And why do you think that organic agriculture is, obviously you think it's better or superior to conventional, and maybe you could talk a little bit about what organic actually means, because I think that a lot of people have misconceptions about what that term means. People have told me that they think it's a radical vegetarian diet, or that it's dirty. Some people at my sister's work didn't want to eat organic produce, because they thought it was dirty. Could you maybe clear that up and maybe give us a brief definition of what organic means?
Okay. Organic agriculture it's just a way of growing produce that works in a holistic manner. So instead of using chemical fertilizers or pesticides or herbicides, you're trying to work with the soil and the water and the biodiversity that's on the specific piece of land. I think that some people have this perception that organic food or organic cuisine, they have a perception dating back, from 30 years ago, when the idea was that it was just a bunch of granola, which it is not at all. I mean, organic cuisine is just as sophisticated as anything else. It's just that the ingredients are much more, in my opinion, superior than something that is not grown organically. The flavors are just so much more enhanced, and you can really taste what something really is, like a tomato. I mean, if you've ever tried the difference between a tomato fresh out of the garden or something that you got at the farmer's market that was organically grown, as opposed to something that you picked up at Vaughn's, there's just no comparison.
And so getting back to the organic cuisine, you're saying that there's a big difference between now and the 70s maybe. And I have a good quote from Robin Williams where he says that, quote, "The first time I ate organic whole grain bread, I swear it tasted like roofing material." End quote. So would you say, because I remember going to potlucks and eating, maybe even in the 80s, I'd make cakes that weighed a ton, or macaroni and yeast instead of macaroni and cheese. So it sounds like organic cuisine and organic produce and just food preparation has grown a lot.
I would say so. It's definitely become much more sophisticated, and I would say in the style of cooking that I specialize in, I like to utilize whatever ingredients we have here, and not necessarily, I like to use whole real ingredients instead of substitutes for their real, for example, margarine or butter or something like that.
No Velveeta in your cabinet?
No Velveeta.
Can you give our listeners, maybe someone's listening right now and they don't know what the difference is between organic and conventional agriculture, and maybe point out a few major differences in the two?
Well, organic agriculture is any type of produce or product that is grown utilizing the organic standards. And actually, several years ago, the federal government passed the Organic Standards Act. And so it is regulated now in this country. So there are no genetically modified ingredients in certified organic products. There is no irradiated material. There's no sludge used in organic products. And conventional growers, on the other hand, use lots of synthetic pesticides and fertilizers, and they also use genetically engineered organisms and growth enhancers for the soil, as well as antibiotics in their meat products and milk products.
You talked about buying local foods. Why do you think it's important to support local farmers?
Well, I think there's a variety of reasons. One thing is that we're really, really fortunate here on the Central Coast to have a lot of really great organic farms and people that are making all types of local products here. So it makes it real easy for us here to support local. And local really helps to build the community and keeps our ecoregion really healthy, the soils, the water systems, the biodiversity of plants and animals and native plants and animals, as well as, especially right now with the climate in the world and the problems with oil and our energy and energy consumption, etc. And when we're purchasing food that's been grown in another part of the country or another part of the world, and we're trying to, for instance, a tomato in January that is maybe grown in South America or South Africa, it's had to travel a long way, and it's really used up a lot of our Earth's resources to make it to our table here in Santa Barbara at that time of the year. So by purchasing something that's grown locally here by our local farmers, we're not having to utilize and use so much of the Earth's energy consumption, and we're actually building the soils and the ecosystems here in our own neighborhood as opposed to depleting them.
Yes, I've read and heard too that food, a lot of the average piece of food item in the U.S. travels thousands of miles to get to our plates.
Yeah, I mean, most people aren't very aware of what they're eating and what time of year and how it's grown and where it comes from. So it's really something to, when you start really becoming aware of that, it's really quite amazing how far things travel for us to be able to eat them.
Yeah, it's a little disturbing.
Yeah.
Especially if, as some scientists say, that peak oil is coming or has already been reached, and then we're not going to have the means to ship the food as far. Here are some facts I just read: that the sales of organic food products are expected to double in the next 4 years. And in the U.S., about 1 to 2% of the food grown is organic. And they said in this article there's about 8,000 organic farmers, that's certified organic farmers in the U.S., and nearly 1/3 of the United States population recently purchased organic foods. Why do you think, and I know the organic industry was a $9.3 billion industry in 2001, why do you think organic foods are booming in popularity right now?
Well, I think a lot more people are becoming aware of the consequences of their food choices, where food's coming from, and wanting to eat more healthily. Also, I think that organic foods have become more mainstream. A lot of larger businesses have bought small businesses that were started in the 70s, and therefore those products now are more readily available in conventional grocery stores or in areas where they may not have been available in the past. Also, as far as organic consumers go, it's not just the upper echelons of the population, as some people might think or stereotype. It's actually a really broad range of people from all over. And we've really only been having non-organic produce in the last 60 or 70 years. Before that, really, the majority of everything we grew was organically grown, as well as in a lot of other countries where people can't afford to buy pesticides and herbicides. They've actually never even crossed over to growing things conventionally.
Yes, and it's only since the 1940s that we have been doing this big experiment. It seems like we're the subjects of an experiment because that's when synthetic pesticides, herbicides, fungicides were introduced to the U.S. and embraced as like a miracle cure to the evil pest problem.
Yeah, a lot of people, it's real interesting because they think that organic is backward or sprung up out of, a movement from the 60s. But in fact, organic agriculture has actually been the mainstream for most of for most of our time period.
And do you think that most consumers, you mentioned a little bit of this before, that people that go to mainstream grocery stores know that the food that they're eating does contain genetically modified organisms, sewage sludge, and could have irradiated ingredients? Do you think the average American is aware of that?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think at this point in this country, we're not required to label products that say that they include genetically modified ingredients. So without that labeling process, it's really hard for us to know what is in the product. Most crops that have the most genetic engineering in them are corn or soy or cotton or peanuts, and corn and soy are in so many products, kind of hidden ingredients that people don't see. And if it's not organic, certified organic, then you can almost guarantee that it has been genetically modified.
And I know with GM crops that the U.S. Frankencorn is what they're calling it, that was banned in Europe. It was found to be contaminated. And we just read an article, too, on Monsanto and how that their rootworm-resistant corn was found. They actually had studies that showed that the rats that were the poor rats in the studies developed smaller kidneys and blood abnormalities from eating this corn. And so if you think these ingredients are out in the public and people are ingesting them, it's kind of disturbing.
Yeah, it is. And they're really, there've been a lot of movements that have been really trying to work to make the public or help educate the public, all of us, on the causes and effects and everything related to genetic engineering. The Organic Consumers Association is a really good group, as well as the Organic Trade Association, that I always go to if I'm needing to get a little information about what's happening and what's currently going on with genetic engineering, as well as any other news related to organics and our food system here in this country and worldwide.
I've heard too in other countries they have to label if a food is genetically modified, and in the U.S. it does not have to be labeled. So you could be buying a lot of your things that you buy every week have GM ingredients. Is that correct?
Yes, though if it's certified organic, it definitely does not have genetic engineered products in it. However, one of the problems with genetically engineered crops is that sometimes the pollen from these crops in the field will blow over or get transferred to organically grown crops that may be nearby. And so then what happens is that those organically grown crops sometimes can get contaminated. So there have been cases of items having to be pulled off the shelf because they were contaminated by a genetically engineered crop nearby. So it's really affecting the whole food chain, and we really don't know what the consequences of that are yet.
Did you ever get to try a Flavor Saver tomato? That was a genetically modified piece of produce that actually, it was made to be a more transportable tomato. But it actually had to get pulled from shelves in 1997 after there were several reports that linked the consumption of the Flavor Saver tomato to people that ate them developed stomach lesions. So it just seems like it's kind of an experiment to see what this food is going to do to people that eat it.
I can say I never really had the pleasure to try one of those flavor saver tomatoes.
How's your stomach?
It's great. But yeah, I mean, it really is an experiment in a way. I mean, we don't really, like I said, we don't know what the consequences are and how it's going to affect humans or the rest of the planet.
I know one big difference between organic and conventional agriculture is the pesticide use. And the EPA considers 60% of all herbicides, 90% of fungicides, and 30% of insecticides as potentially cancer-causing. And do organic farmers use synthetic pesticides?
No, they don't.
So there's other ways to get rid of pests or just to live in harmony with pests, or other than spraying them?
Yes, I think with organic agriculture, it's all about managing the land that you're on and planting companion plants or plants that, whatever the disease is for one plant, you have another one that will kind of combat that, as well as integrated pest management is a really popular form that would be bringing other pests to your farm, insects that would eat something that's affecting your crop. It's also just a whole management system. Like I said, building up the topsoil is number one, the most important thing, and that all the microorganisms in the soil really help to keep the plant really alive and healthy and nutritious. And when it's really healthy, there's less of a likelihood that it will be affected by some of these other pests.
I've also read crop rotation helps, so they're not growing the same thing every year, and then it gets wiped out by the same pests.
Yes, that's another really good method.
I think, too, it's that I read this today, and U.S. homeowners apply 90 million pounds of pesticides to their gardens and lawns, and 1/3 of these are known or suspected endocrine disruptors, and 1/4 of them contain reproductive toxins. So I could see how supporting organic agriculture could help. Just kind of, you're not even going to support that industry at all, the chemical industry.
Yeah, I really feel that food is one of the best ways that all of us can support a more sustainable world and really cut down on our chemical consumption or oil consumption or energy consumption. All those things is, the first step, I think, and a really easy step for everybody is to start buying more local, organically grown produce and local organic using local organic ingredients. We all have to eat, and we all go to the store, and our dollars really are, they're making a statement of what we want and how we want things to be.
Now, some people have told me that they can't afford to buy organic because it's more expensive. And I've noticed that, too. Like, I buy pretty much all organic food, and my food bills are pretty high. Do you know why organic food costs more usually than non-organic?
Well, there's several reasons. One thing is that oftentimes organic farms or products that are grown on an organic farm are coming from a small family-operated farm as opposed to a industrialized corporate farm. So that definitely raises the cost a little bit, as well as if with the whole organic certification, there's a lot of regulations and certification processes that you have to go through as a farmer, and those all cost. As in the conventional farming, there are no regulations of that sort that you would have to go through and purchase a certification. The certification process can be quite rigorous depending on what certifying agency you're going through as an organic farmer. And several years ago, the USDA had regulated and standardized the certification process so that if it was labeled certified organic, that it had a certain definition attached to it. Another reason that the cost is a little higher on organic agriculture or products that are grown organically is that a lot of the products that are grown on a conventional farm are subsidized by the government, and there are no subsidies for organic farmers. So this also helps to lower the cost on the shelf for conventional items. But if you really took the real cost into consideration, organic agriculture would be the same, if not cheaper, less expensive than conventional agriculture, because you're not taking in all the considerations of soil depletion or water pollution or the use of energy consumption that is going into a conventionally grown product or crop, pesticides, the fertilizers, all that, the health of the farm workers and the sometimes children that are living nearby an industrial agricultural site where a lot of heavy herbicides and pesticides are being used. So if you really consider all these costs, in the long run, organic agriculture is less expensive for all of us, and as well as our own personal health costs. If you're using less chemicals that you're putting into your body, it's in my belief that it will help reduce your health costs.
Yes, there's. I know that I've done a lot of studies on pesticides, and a lot of them are endocrine hormone disrupting agents. They can cause permanent hereditary changes and affect male fertility for 4 generations. And an article just came out a couple weeks ago saying that if your grandparents were exposed to chemicals, that could still be affecting their grandkids, and it's for 4 generations. So that's very disturbing. So on the surface, it may cost more to buy those organic grapes, but what you're saying is in the long run, the costs, it's a lot better for you and your health and the planet.
Yeah, and like you just said, Jill, I mean, for the generations to come, your children and your children's children, it's all part of it. With conventional agriculture, it's really depleting all of our soils and our topsoils, and if we continue along on that path, it's really going to be difficult for us to feed all the people on the planet, because there will be no nutrients left in the soil, and that's actually what goes into the plant and gives us nutrition.
You've eaten, and I've eaten too, organic and non-organic produce. Can you really tell the difference in taste as being a professional chef? Do you feel like your products are superior in taste?
Well, I guess that's one of the reasons that I started my catering business, is when I was working at the organic nursery and selling produce that we had grown on the farm. I felt like it was a taste test for everyone, and that's why I started cooking and sharing it with people, just allowing people to taste it and taste the difference, and then I can explain to them what it is. But I don't let people know off the bat this is all organic. I just let them try it. And so I just put that challenge out to everybody to make your own taste test. Go to the farmer's market, buy some wonderful heirloom tomatoes, and buy some other varieties that aren't organic and aren't heirloom and aren't grown locally, and see if you can find the difference.
That lovely pale pink, kind of rubbery type wax tomato from the regular market?
Exactly.
Those are not my favorite. And I would say, too, that our country, in the U.S. here, there's so many issues with food. All the diets people are on, the Atkins diet. What is going on with Americans and food? I remember a woman in my video class years ago who was so proud of herself. She said she was turning over a new leaf and eating healthily, and she was on the Atkins diet. And all she would eat all day were those Atkins bars wrapped in foil, and she really thought she was doing a great thing. But why do you think Americans are so obsessed with food, and what's happening here as far as the fast food, and we're all just in such a hurry and buying cheap food, non-organic food?
Well, I think a really good book to read is Fast Food Nation by Eric Schlosser. Is that how you pronounce it? That really talks about the turning point, I think, in this country, probably about in the 60s or late 60s, early 70s, 50s, when the way that Americans ate really changed, and we became more of a fast food nation, kind of the grab and go kind of thing. And I think that a lot of the foods that are prepared in that way really have less nutrition, and they're depleting our bodies much more than they are nourishing them. I think in a lot of other countries where the fast food craze has been a little slower to hit, people are still preparing all their foods, and they have home-cooked meals, and It does take time, and we're moving at a really fast pace here, and sometimes that's really difficult. But if you grab an apple or, a piece of fruit or something that's easy to grab, you can still grab that, and it can be organic, and it's not going to gobble up all your time.
Well, too, you were saying the fast food movement has not caught on in other countries, and I know the French activist who was he was sent to jail for 3 months for his 1999 demolition of a McDonald's outlet. You just don't hear of that happening here. Now, why would Europe or why would France be so opposed to American fast food?
I think in other countries, people are very much, food is really, we all partake of it, and it's centered around family. I mean, if you're ever at a gathering or a party, you know that everyone always gathers in the kitchen. It's the place that everyone wants to be, and it's kind of our center and the place that nourishes us on many levels. And I think that in other places, there's a real strong adherence still to being a family or a community and really preparing things together. And one of the organizations here in town is the Slow Food Movement, and they are advocates of, contrary to fast food, it's about slowing down and really taking time to build your relationships and be with your family and friends and relatives and make food together and enjoy it.
Make food, not war. My old professor of religious studies at Dr. Raimundo Panicar, who some of the listeners may have loved as well, he said that food and eating food was making love with Mother Nature. And I think food is such a sensual issue for people. And how sensual is it to go through a drive-thru and get a double cheeseburger and then wolf it down while you're driving, as opposed to eating something that's been lovingly prepared with time and effort put into it?
I think that is probably one of the most common comments that I get about the food that I prepare is that people can really taste the difference, and they can really feel the love and nurturing and intention that's gone into the food, opposed to something that's been processed 5,000 miles away and shipped in a box and frozen and then unfrozen and thrown out the window to them. There's a real difference there.
In Fast Food Nation, I read that one of the major fast food chains, I won't say which one it is, but none of their food is fresh. It's reconstituted with water. So that, I don't know how many nutrients could be in that food. Now, you were talking about buying with the seasons. What does that mean exactly?
Well, it means buying what is locally produced in your area. And that is for some of us, it's a real learning process, because when you go to a grocery store, at least here in the United States, you can get anything any time of the year. So you don't really know what is grown when and where is it from and all that. But if you really start going to farmers markets or places where local farmers and producers are selling items, you really start to learn about your area and what is grown in the season in your area. Here in Santa Barbara, we're really lucky that we just have an abundance of different vegetables and fruits that are really available all year long. So what you want to do is go to the market and purchase wonderful produce and then plan your menus around what you have, as opposed to looking up in a cookbook and seeing a recipe for tomato soup or roasted peppers, and it's the middle of December, because those are going to be coming from a different part of the world that they can grow in that climate.
And lots of times those products are also sprayed heavily with pesticides that may be outlawed in the U.S. Like DDT is still used in certain South American countries and exported by the U.S.
Yes, that's true. And they also use different types of gases, because the produce is having to travel so far, and it's a perishable item, but it needs to be packaged and treated in such a way that it can get from South America or wherever it's coming from and get to our shelf and then onto our table without perishing.
That's kind of scary. They're like mummies. Now, I also have read, too, that non-conventional farmers and producers of food can also spray, just like you were saying, can use chemicals and pesticides and all sorts of stuff during the transport of the food. Have you heard that? So not only are the foods maybe getting sprayed in the fields, but also during transport and storage.
Yes, as well as sometimes they use wax. Sometimes if you've gotten a cucumber or a tomato or an apple that's grown conventionally, it kind of feels real waxy or has a waxy film on it. Those are also ways that they try to preserve the life of the vegetable or fruit.
When I'm shopping around town, I've seen organic dairy and meat products, and I'm curious what that means exactly. Does it mean the cow is a vegetarian?
Well, hopefully the cow is a vegetarian, because cows are actually vegetarians.
Except when they're eating cows in their food, right?
Right, which does happen sometimes in some of the feedlots for animals that are not grown organically or produced organically. But if they are produced organically, they would be fed ingredients that were organically grown, as well as they would not be given any types of growth hormones or antibiotics. And also, I think another goal of raising organic livestock would be to always have fresh water, a good, healthy living environment for the animal.
And what about eggs? Is that the same thing for the chickens as well?
Yes, they would be fed organic feed as well. If it says free range, it means that they are uncaged, but not necessarily all organic eggs are free range.
So you probably want to look for free range and organic.
Yes.
Do you believe that our food choices can affect the world at large, and not just our own health, but the health of the planet?
I definitely believe in that, and I would say that that's the basic premise and mission behind my catering company here, and really what I'm trying to create by the work that I do.
And one example that I always think of is when I'm faced with the choice of buying organic strawberries versus non-organic. I know that methyl bromide is a toxin that's used on non-organic strawberries, and methyl bromide causes severe ozone layer thinning. And so just that choice, you're not supporting that industry by buying organic strawberries. So can you think of any other examples where your food choices affect the world in a more positive way?
Yeah, I think that's a really great example, Jill, with the organic strawberries. And I think here in Santa Barbara County, strawberries are one of our largest crops. And it really affects us on the local level. So by making that simple choice of choosing the organic strawberries over the conventionally grown is really making a difference for our children and our communities and the farm workers and everyone's health in this area. And I also feel that every choice that we make in our purchasing power, I think that we all need to eat, and food is one of the best ways that we can really get behind our beliefs and start working towards supporting a more sustainable lifestyle for ourselves and for future generations is by the food choices that we make. And our purchasing power really affects the people that are in business and what they're growing and how things are run. If more of us are purchasing organic products, then more people will start growing it.
Which would then affect the planet in a positive way, because not so many toxic chemicals are being put into the soil and air and water.
Yes, I agree with that. These are, some really basic ideas of why it's important to support organic food and organic agriculture, because it does support our environment and our future needs and supports the soil. It really builds soil health, whereas conventional farming really depletes it, and the soil is the building block for all of our food systems. It helps keep the ecosystems healthy and helps to not pollute our waters. The elimination of polluting chemicals and nitrogen-leaching fertilizers done in combination with organic soil building practices contributes to the overall quality of our lakes, rivers, and estuaries, and thereby protecting our groundwater and our drinking waters.
Extremely important, especially in the upcoming years.
Yes, it is. And by, on a local level, there again, it's really become such a trend to see bottled water everywhere now. Nobody really drinks water out of the tap because it's all contaminated by runoff and pollution, etc. And so this is a really good example of just by making that choice of buying the organic strawberries, you're really helping to support your local watershed and the water that's underneath the soil here in Santa Barbara.
Now, I know that buying organic, in a way, it's a radical act because you're really affecting so much of the planet and affecting other people's lives as well as your own. I'm wondering, though, what if you're a person working in Santa Barbara and you don't have that much time, and it's much easier to go through the drive-thru at In-N-Out Burger than to prepare a meal? Do you have any advice to people about what they could do to integrate a more healthy way of eating into their life?
Well, I think that it definitely requires a conscious choice and a desire to make a change first and foremost. And secondly, I think really making a ritual out of your food and what you're creating and what you're preparing. And one really good way to do it is here in Santa Barbara, we have so many farmers markets. Almost every day of the week there's a farmers market. So taking a time when you can go shopping and get the ingredients that you need. And again, organic food is not just produce. It's not just fruits and vegetables. There's all kinds of organic products out there. Probably anything that you can get conventionally, almost, you could find an organic counterpart. And
organic chocolate?
Organic chocolate, yep. Organic coffee, organic tea, organic beer, organic wine. Really.
Organic carrot cake?
Organic carrot cake. Anything you want, organic. So one of my suggestions would be to kind of figure some different recipes or items that you'd like to have or foods that you like to eat and maybe make them in big batches and either put them in the freezer or make it for 2 or 3 days, something that you can take with you to work or to school or wherever you're going that's really keeping you away from the home and away from cooking at that time, stocking up on certain items that you can use. There's a lot of organic products that would be more of a to-go item or something that would be a little more convenient, but they do use all organic ingredients and they've been produced in an organically certified kitchen or processing plant or whatever that.
So there are options available if you still want to buy a frozen dinner or something. I know there's frozen veggie burgers, all sorts of things that are organic.
Yes, there are. I mean, you definitely do not need to make everything homemade in your home if you want to eat organically. There's plenty of items out there that are really good that are frozen or that are already prepared that you can purchase as well to take with you to work or school.
That's fantastic. That's probably gives some people hope that don't have a lot of time.
Yeah.
If you could give listeners one action that they could do to help the planet in the area of cooking and eating in the food area, what would it be?
I would say to purchase organic products and products that are grown, ingredients that are grown organically, as well as trying to support whatever farmers are local in your area. Really believe that that's one of the main things that most of us can do in our lives.
It's been great having you on the show today, Kim. And do you have anything else you'd like to say?
Well, support local organic farmers and go to your farmers markets, have a good time, and really let your creativity flow when you're cooking. I mean, it's an enjoyable thing, so have a good time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jill.
You've been listening to a Sustainable World Radio podcast. For more information or to hear our other podcasts or interviews, visit www.sustainableworldradio.com. Sustainable World Radio is produced by Jill Cloutier. Music by Dana Lyons. Thanks for listening.